First things first, Baz. I'll get a printout of this diagram. I'll use the A0 printout that you got me or sent to me. With this virus stuff going around, I'm just gonna stay put. I'm not gonna do anything, go anywhere except for work and back home. I'm just gonna take it easy for a little bit and just hunker down. We have a case in Cocoa Beach and 2 cases in Titusville, which are right outside Cocoa. And let's just be honest, there's carriers and people don't know they have it. I just want to make sure I just avoid all that mess. But I'll get to the print shop soon. Hello, Celeste. Hopefully this video can help people fall asleep. If it's boring, you can turn it on and listen to the rain in the background and they can go to sleep to it. It's going to be a kind of long video this time around. Though Daniel Archer had mentioned something about me being somewhat of a Darwin type person, and there were a lot of similarities with Darwin. Back in the mid 1800s, he was a naturalist that would collect a lot of fossils and various organisms, and he'd do a lot of thinking when he was on the HMS Beagle, sailing basically around the world. And his thing was noticing that there were different species of finches, and they were separated by islands, and the locals were like, you know what, these are different species of finches, and the environmental pressures cause them to be naturally selected and to change their beak shape and their body type and whatnot, but they all have a similar ancestor. Stellar metamorphosis is a bit different. Now, natural theology back in the early 1800s, there's four main ideas here. Number one, the earth was created by God. Two, there were species that didn't change ever, which means they were created by God as well, human beings being one of those. The creation event was very short. The earth was only 6,000 years old, and the creation event was like 7 days or whatever. And there was a perfect design for each species, which means the species were immutable for the most part. They didn't change. Once they were created, they didn't change. And Darwin, threw that up in the air and said, you know what, why would that be the case? Is it true? How is that possible? And he started questioning it and being a very inquisitive person. Yeah, I think one of the main similarities with me and Darwin is that we're both very inquisitive. I know a lot of my listeners are also very inquisitive, and that's basically the number one thing about being a scientist is being inquisitive. These days, they don't teach scientists to be inquisitive. They sort of say, this is the truth. You either accept it or you get an F and you fail out. And if you don't accept it and you start publishing different ideas, we're going to blacklist you and prevent you from publication and all that stuff. And they're not being scientists anymore. They're more or less being they're dogmatists. They're not actually scientists anymore. They've gone off the deep end. But any case, when he was on the HMS Beagle sailing around, he was reading Charles Lyell's work on geological time. The fact that Earth, is that there's evidence on the Earth that the Earth is many millions of years old, not 6,000 years old and created in 7 days that the natural theologists wanted people to believe. So he was thinking, well, if the Earth is millions of years old, and kind of getting yourself in that mindset that the Earth is millions of years old, then the time required for some species to change into another is there. It's possible for a species to change into another. It's possible for things to have a very, 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 very rich, deep history and to look completely different than what they are today. And he started to kind of figure this out. I don't want to go into specific details, but he had collected iguanas, mockingbirds, thrushes. He was looking at the tortoises. And the environments caused pressure to make them change. Now, the similarity between me and Darwin in this case is that there was gradual change over long periods of time. The changes that I'm proposing for stars, the gradual change is evident in the stars themselves with the exoplanets being found. My iguanas, mockingbirds, thrushes, tortoises, and finches are Neptunes, water worlds, brown dwarfs, gray dwarfs, dead stars, moons, you name it. My different species, my gradual change over eons of time are the stars themselves. You see, they start out really hot, big and bright, and they cool and undergo metamorphosis. Not exactly evolution in terms of Darwin's ideas, in terms of previous researchers, and that, you know, the species dies after it procreates, and it makes another version that's slightly different, and then that keeps on going and going over many, many, many generations. No, it's more or less the star stays the same star. It just changes in of itself. It doesn't die, spread its genetic information, and become a whole new star all over again. And then that new star is a different type of star. Like the sun dies, and then it becomes a brown dwarf after it dies completely. No, the sun gradually changes over many tens of millions and hundreds of millions and billions of years. Now, that being said, the reason why I chose the word metamorphosis is that evolution, sort of the mainstream's version of evolution, was used in stellar evolution, but their mentality of it is highly misguided. Being that the very word that they picked to describe the star's changes, they use the word evolution, is not very good at all if they were trying to mean that the star completely died and then made a new one. It's more or less, they should have chosen the word metamorphosis, which means after change. So it means the object itself changes and becomes a something else. It would be more or less like if Darwin said an animal undergoes metamorphosis, like a tiger transforms into a squirrel or something like that, something completely crazy. So metamorphosis, I think, is the better term. And Darwin's idea of natural selection, the parallel that I have with stellar metamorphosis is polymetamorphism. So basically, star systems, since they all evolve, they all undergo metamorphosis in their own timescales. Polymetamorphism meaning there's many stages of metamorphosis happening in each star system. Star systems have objects that are all different, that have all different characteristics. Here's a short list of characteristics. I'll read these out to you. They all have different diameters, masses, level of core and mantle crust formation, elemental ratio, types of atmosphere, sizes of iron cores, stages of life formation, strength of radiance, heat production processes, types of chemical reactions, types of chemical equilibriums among material present, their ages. Some are tens of millions, if not billions of years older than others, inside of the same star system. Their orbital distances, they're all different. For instance, the TRAPPIST-1 system has really close-in orbits that are closer than the orbit of Mercury. And some others, the orbit lasts for like 6,000 years for very large gas giants around their host star. The rates of mass loss, the orbital direction. Some star systems have other older stars orbiting in the opposite direction the host is rotating. The dogma doesn't have any explanation for that. They're all supposed to be going in the same direction, but they just sort of ignore that. That's not important. The orientation of magnetic fields, the rotational direction, the strength of magnetic fields, their impact histories, different isotopic abundances of many elements, the geological surface features, densities, orbital inclinations, axial tilts, orbital velocities, the albedos, meaning how well they reflect light, the strength of gravitational fields, the temperatures of atmospheres at inner regions, the equatorial rotational velocities, their moments of inertia, how well differentiated they are, their angular momentums, their volumes, surface areas, oblateness, some are more round than others. Earth is more oblate than the sun. The thickness of atmospheres, the color changes, the locations of heat production, changes to gravitational potential energy near surface and in the interior, yada, 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 yada. They're all different. They're all vastly different. It's a fruit salad with nuts and other types of food altogether. But they all have a similar origin. Their origin is they're all stars in various stages of metamorphosis. I was about to say evolution right there, but it's not fitting anymore. And basically, the star theory can all sort of wrap up even Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection, and all of genetics, and all of biology and astronomy and geology can all be wrapped up. And that the processes concerning stellar evolution, which is planet formation, includes all physical and life sciences. All of them. Any physical and life science can be applied to some aspect of stellar evolution. And that's a big thing, because it essentially means that this theory is a theory of everything. Not including, pulsars, I guess, and quasars and AGNs, which are active galactic nuclei. But this is the closest to the theory of everything that I think has ever been theorized. Because the ideas of the theory of everything that the cosmologists have, the religious folk, they sort of abstract away the meaning of nature to get to these completely absurd notions that the entire universe was the size of a watermelon, which then exploded for no reason, which is the Big Bang Theory in a nutshell, which is totally absurd. The universe doesn't have an age. It's everything. It's all ages. It's all distances. It's literally beyond us. So to have an actual theory of everything means that we need to conceptualize the physical objects inside of the universe in as much as we can refer to them as being everything. We just can't invent random things like dark energy and dark matter and Big Bang and then think that actually explains anything, because it doesn't. It's a cop-out. What astronomers should be doing is taking their observations and making sense of them and synthesizing what we actually observe. Nobody's ever observed a Big Bang event. They can say it happened, but there's no observations of anything remotely happening that has anything to do with some giant explosion. Like, where did it happen? Where did this explosion happen? How did the explosion happen and create time without the time needed to create the event in the first place? See, the whole concept just collapses on itself. So to say, I don't know why I got off that rant, that tangent, but the cosmologists say they have no idea what they're talking about at all. They had no idea that planets are evolved stars. They had no idea that stellar evolution itself is planet formation. And it was like similar with Darwin, is that he was like, wait, there's an explanation for all this. It just didn't appear out of nothing. It isn't just God just waved a magic wand and created the Earth and the solar system. No, there's a reason why the solar system is the way it is. There's a reason why all these objects are different. They're all in different stages of metamorphosis. As well, the dogma, as it's taught in astronomy classes these days, they still claim that planets don't change, ever. They form as is and they remain that way. Just like the natural theologists said that species don't change. They are created by God and then they just remain that way. But we all know that's false, because exoplanets are all in different stages of evolution, and they all have different masses and densities. They're polymetamorphic. These objects all intermingle and mix together to create systems, and they're all different. So that's one idea. We're moving away from the cosmologists' natural theology when it comes to forming the Earth. Remember, they have the Earth forming in maybe a couple million years, but that doesn't make any sense. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. The reason why the Earth is 4.5 billion years old is because it took 4.5 billion years to form. Why would it be 4.5 billion years if it formed in a million years or so? It doesn't make any sense. It's irrational. So it didn't have a short creation. The Earth's age is the amount of time it took to create the Earth. Similar, I'm 35 years old. It took 35 years to form me, plus, time in the womb and whatnot. As well, the cosmologists and the astronomers, they say, well, they have the mentality that there's such thing as a Goldilocks zone. It has to be just right. It has to be just the right distance from its host star to host life. It has to be just the right temperature, just the right environmental conditions. just like the natural theologists, they say, well, the species were designed exactly as they are, perfect design to fit the environment. But that's also a false reasoning that the modern cosmologists have, because the Earth wasn't always like this. It was very, very different. It formed the environment as it evolved, and the life evolved alongside of it, inside of it, and the Earth basically made us. And it isn't that the Earth is perfectly designed for life. It isn't. I mean, well, it is kind of now, but our specific type of life. But I mean, it wasn't like the Earth was lifeless, and then life sprung up on it. As the Earth size that it is now, and the exact elemental compositions and every single parameter that it is now, it evolved to its current state from vastly different states of its metamorphosis early on in its history. It had to get to this stage in its metamorphosis in order to host life. That being said, all the other gas giants and stars out there, they have to undergo metamorphosis to get to the stage to where they can host life. They don't just form as is and then they've always been that size and density and atmospheric composition. It doesn't work like it doesn't just boom, it forms and then life just pops up on it. So the entire mentality of the modern cosmologists is similar to the natural theologists of the early 1800s. And Daniel Archer's, kind of right that, yeah, maybe I am kind of like Darwin in the sense that I question the ideas and I say, well, how is that even possible? Why would that be true? And also I kind of look at time as being a big variable there. It's deep time. Things on the Earth didn't just pop into existence. It took billions of years for it to get like this. And we're seeing evidence of young Earths in the galaxy. It's just that astronomers, they still call them stars, which is really, really strange once you start to understand this theory. All right, guys, I think I made this video long enough. I hope those of you who were bored by it have fallen asleep already. All right, later.